Lawmakers supporting LB 541 can get ready for quite a fight. Election commissions across the state lining up to oppose the bill they believe will take away some rights for voters in the state.
First Alert reporter John Chapman tells us Douglas County now joins the list of counties not in favor of the bill.
According to Douglas County officials, 50% of voters in Douglas County now choose to vote by mail. And on average, 75% of all ballots are returned in secured drop boxes located across the county. Douglas County Election Commissioner Brian Cruz told members of the Douglas County Board, if passed, LB 541 would change the way Nebraskans vote, eliminating online voter registration, restricting voter registration by mail, and requiring voters to give a reason for voting early.
There's only 3 states in the nation that currently you have to have an excuse: Alabama, Mississippi, and New Hampshire. And Mississippi has some legislation now to eliminate that. I also think it's worth pointing out, not only did both major political parties last fall and both major candidates for both political parties for president not only embraced early voting, but they had campaigns that they spent millions of dollars on to get their voters out to vote early across the nation.
Cruz also pointed out the bill, by reducing the number of early voting days, is basically an unfunded mandate.
If we were to move from 35 to 22, you got to do the same amount of work in a lot less days. And we estimate that would need to be, for last fall's election, we'd have had to hire 22 additional employees. It'd have been in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. 50% of all people in Douglas County now vote by mail.
Other provisions in the bill would require the hand counting of ballots to combat voter fraud, which Cruz says is not a serious problem in the state.
I think the bottom line to this bill is, what problems are we solving here? And I don't think there's any questions. It's taking a lot of rights away from voters.
Members of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners believe the bill and its changes are not necessary in Nebraska.
If I had an opportunity, I could pound the heck out of this bill. I could take 8 hours to rip this to shreds. And the lawyers better come in, and they better convince me that we're trying to solve a problem, because this is regulatory constraint.
This seems to me to be the latest in a long line of voter suppression efforts by people who aren't interested in getting the highest vote. I think the highest vote that we could possibly get should be all of our goals.
And the question was asked, where did this come from? Well, look across the country. I mean, seriously. All this is people throwing out, again, misnomers, untruths about voter fraud.
After all the talk, commissioners voted 7-0 to oppose LB 541.
Voters should have the ability to choose to vote the way they want, but we should also make that easy and convenient for them, which is what our current statutes do.
In Omaha, I'm John Chapman, First Alert 6.
Cruz told the commissioners there is also opposition to the bill from the Election Law Committee and the commissioners in Lancaster County and Hall County. A hearing on the bill set for March 5th.